What happens when a man who's perfected the art of winning hearts meets a woman who refuses to be won? Ryan thought he had dating figured out. At 28, he worked as a marketing manager for a tech company downtown. Nice apartment, good car, designer clothes hanging in his closet. He knew exactly what to say to make women laugh. He knew which restaurants impressed them. He even knew when to text back to keep them interested. His friends called him lucky with women. Ryan called it skill. He had a system that worked every single time. First, he'd spot someone interesting at a party or coffee shop. Then he'd make eye contact and flash his practiced smile. Next came the casual approach with a clever opening line he'd tested before. After that, he'd share just enough about his success to sound impressive but not boastful. The whole thing was like following a recipe. Mix confidence with charm, add some mystery, and serve with perfect timing. It worked so well that Ryan rarely had to think about it anymore. His moves had become automatic, but that Friday night changed everything. His coworker Jake was throwing a birthday party at his house across town. Ryan almost didn't go. He'd been working late all week and felt tired. But Jake kept insisting, saying there would be interesting people there. Ryan finally agreed, thinking he might meet someone new. The party was already crowded when he arrived. Music played softly in the background while groups of people chatted in the living room and kitchen. Ryan grabbed a drink and started his usual scan of the room, looking for potential targets. That's when he saw her. She sat in the corner of the living room, curled up in an armchair with a book in her lap. While everyone else was socializing, she seemed perfectly content reading. Her dark hair fell across her face as she focused on the pages. She wore a simple blue dress and comfortable flats. Nothing flashy or attention-grabbing. Ryan watched her, for a few minutes fascinated. Who brings a book to a party? And why did she look so relaxed while everyone else seemed to be trying so hard to have fun? He decided to make his move. Walking over with his most charming smile, he positioned himself near her chair. "Interesting party reading?" he said, nodding at her book. She looked up with calm brown eyes. No surprise, no excitement at being approached by an attractive guy, just mild curiosity. "It's actually quite good," she replied, showing him the cover. "Have you read anything by this author?" Ryan glanced at the title. He'd never heard of the writer, but that wasn't unusual. He didn't read much fiction. "Not yet, but I'm always looking for recommendations. I'm Ryan, by the way." "Nice to meet you, Ryan." "I'm Maya." She closed the book and gave him her attention, but something felt different. Usually when Ryan approached women, they seemed eager to keep the conversation going. They'd laugh a little too loudly at his jokes or ask questions about his job. Maya just waited patiently for him to say something. "Interesting. So what brings you to Jake's party?" Ryan tried again. "Jake and I work at the same university. We teach in different departments, but we've become good friends." Maya's voice was soft but confident. "What about you?" "Jake and I work together. Downtown. Marketing stuff, pretty boring, really." This line usually made women ask more questions about his job, giving him a chance to casually mention his success. Maya just nodded. "What kind of marketing do you find most interesting?" The question caught him off guard. Most people asked what company he worked for or how much he made. Maya seemed genuinely curious about the actual work. Ryan found himself talking about campaigns he'd enjoyed, projects that had challenged him creatively. Maya listened with real attention, asking thoughtful follow-up questions that made him think harder about his answers. 20 minutes passed without Ryan realizing it. He'd completely forgotten about using his usual techniques. No practice stories, no casual mentions of his expensive watch or his corner office view, just normal conversation about work, books, and weekend plans. "I should probably let you get back to your book," Ryan said eventually, though he didn't want the conversation to end. "Actually, I was thinking of putting it away. The party's getting more interesting." Maya smiled and Ryan felt something flutter in his chest. They moved to the kitchen to get drinks. Ryan offered to buy her something, forgetting they were at a house party where everything was free. Maya laughed gently at his mistake, but not in a mean way. "Thanks for the offer, but I think Jake's got us covered tonight." As the evening continued, Ryan kept expecting to slip back into his usual routine. But every time he started to tell one of his go-to stories, Maya would ask a question that steered the conversation somewhere unexpected. When he mentioned his weekend plans to go to an expensive restaurant, she asked if he enjoyed cooking at home. When he talked about his gym membership, she wondered if he liked hiking outdoors. It was like she was gently redirecting him away from showing off and toward actually sharing things about himself. Real things, not the polished version he usually presented. Around 11, people started leaving the party. Maya gathered her things and said goodbye to Jake. Ryan realized he hadn't gotten her phone number yet. "Hey, would you maybe want to get coffee sometime?" he asked, feeling strangely nervous. Maya paused, studying his face. For a moment, Ryan thought she might say no. "I'd like that," she said finally. "But let's go somewhere quiet where we can actually talk." She wrote her number on a napkin and handed it to him. "Text me this week and we'll figure out a time." As she walked to her car, Ryan stood in Jake's driveway, feeling confused. The evening hadn't gone according to his usual plan at all. He'd barely used any of his proven techniques. Maya hadn't seemed impressed by his success or charmed by his wit. Yet somehow, he felt more excited about seeing her again than he had about any woman in years. Driving home, Ryan kept thinking about their conversation. Maya had made him feel interesting in a completely different way than usual, not because of what he owned or accomplished, but because of what he thought and felt. It was unsettling and thrilling at the same time. For the first time in years, Ryan had no idea what would happen next. Ryan waited exactly 3 days before texting Maya. Not because he wanted to, but because that's what his dating strategy demanded. Never text the same day, always wait at least 2 days, but never more than 4. The rules had worked perfectly, for years. His message was carefully crafted. "Hey Maya, had a great time talking with you at Jake's party. Want to grab coffee this weekend? I know a perfect place downtown." Her reply came an hour later. "Hi Ryan, coffee sounds lovely. How about that little cafe on Maple Street instead? It's quieter and they have amazing pastries. Saturday at 2. Ryan stared at his phone, frowning. The cafe on Maple Street was tiny and casual. He'd planned to take her to the trendy coffee shop in the business district where everyone could see him with an attractive woman. But Maya had already suggested somewhere else. He typed back, "Sure, Maple Street works." Saturday arrived faster than expected. Ryan spent an hour choosing his outfit, settling on a casual but expensive sweater and his favorite watch. He arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early to scope out the best table and maybe chat with the staff to look familiar and important. The place was nothing like his usual spots. Mismatched chairs surrounded small wooden tables. Local artwork covered the walls. The whole place smelled like fresh bread and cinnamon. A few college students typed on laptops in the corner while an elderly couple shared a newspaper. Maya walked in exactly at 2 o'clock. She wore jeans and a soft green sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup that Ryan could see, but she looked naturally beautiful. "This place is perfect," Ryan said as she sat down, though he felt completely out of his element. "I love coming here to grade papers," Maya replied, looking around with genuine affection. "The owner, Mrs. Chen, makes the best apple turnovers in the city." They ordered drinks and found a table by the window. Ryan prepared to launch into his usual first date routine. He'd start with an amusing story about his week, then casually mention a few impressive details about his job, maybe talk about his recent vacation to show he was well-traveled and successful. "So tell me about your week," Maya said before he could begin. "Did you work on any interesting projects?" Again, she'd asked about the actual work instead of giving him an opening to brag. Ryan found himself describing a campaign he was developing for a local charity instead of the big corporate account that paid better but bored him. "That sounds meaningful," Maya said, leaning forward slightly. "What drew you to help them specifically?" No one had ever asked Ryan that question. He'd taken the charity project because his boss suggested it might look good on his review. But talking to Maya, he remembered why he'd actually gotten excited about it. "I guess I like the idea of using marketing to help people instead of just selling them stuff they don't need," he said, surprising himself with his honesty. Maya smiled warmly. That's wonderful. It must feel good to use your skills for something that matters. Ryan nodded, feeling an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. They talked for another hour about work, books, travel, and weekend hobbies. Every time Ryan tried to steer the conversation toward his accomplishments, Maya would ask a question that made him think deeper about his actual experiences and feelings. When she mentioned loving weekend hikes, Ryan almost told her about his expensive gym membership and personal trainer. Instead, he found himself admitting he spent most weekends working or watching TV. There's this great trail about an hour north of the city, Maya said. The view from the top is incredible, especially this time of year with all the fall colors. Ryan's usual move would be to suggest an expensive restaurant for their next date. Instead, he heard himself saying, "That sounds amazing. I haven't been hiking in years. Would you like to go next weekend? I could show you my favorite spots." "I'd love that," Ryan replied, meaning it completely. As they prepared to leave, Ryan reached for his wallet to pay for both drinks. Maya gently touched his arm. "I've got mine," she said with a smile. "But thank you for offering." Another small rejection of his usual approach. Ryan was starting to notice a pattern, but he couldn't figure out if Maya was playing hard to get or genuinely different from other women he'd dated. Walking to their cars, Ryan decided to test his theory. He moved closer to Maya, letting his hand brush hers as they walked. She didn't pull away, but she didn't lean into him either. At her car, he positioned himself for what he hoped would be their first kiss. Maya turned to face him, standing close, enough that he could smell her light perfume. Ryan leaned in slightly, watching her face for encouragement. "I had a really nice time today," Maya said softly, but she stepped back just enough to create space between them. "I'm looking forward to that hike next weekend." The rejection was so gentle that Ryan almost didn't realize it had happened. Maya wasn't being rude or playing games. She was just setting boundaries. "Me too," Ryan managed to say. "Should I pick you up or do you want to meet somewhere?" "Let's meet at the trailhead," Maya suggested. "I'll text you the address during the week." She gave him a brief hug goodbye, the kind of hug friends might share before getting in her car. Ryan stood in the parking lot watching her drive away, feeling more confused than ever. Every technique in his dating playbook had failed today. Maya hadn't been impressed by his stories, hadn't asked about his income or possessions, and had politely but firmly avoided any physical contact beyond that friendly hug. Yet somehow, Ryan was more excited about seeing her again than he'd been about any second date in years. As he drove home, he couldn't stop thinking about the way her eyes lit up when she talked about hiking, or how genuinely interested she'd seemed in his charity project. Maybe his usual approach wasn't working because Maya was looking for something completely different than what he'd been offering. The hiking date changed everything for Ryan, though not in the way he expected. He spent the entire week preparing like he was training for a marathon. New hiking boots, expensive outdoor gear, energy bars, and a fancy water bottle that cost more than most people's grocery budget. He even watched YouTube videos about hiking techniques and trail safety. Saturday morning found him at the trailhead 30 minutes early, nervously adjusting his brand new backpack. When Maya arrived, she took one look at his setup and started laughing. "Ryan, we're going on a 3-hour hike, not climbing Mount Everest," she said, gesturing at his professional-grade equipment. She wore worn jeans, comfortable sneakers, and carried a simple water bottle in her hand. No fancy gear, no expensive brands, just practical clothes that had clearly seen many adventures. "I wanted to be prepared," Ryan said, feeling foolish. "That's sweet," Maya replied without any hint of mockery. "Ready to see some beautiful views?" The trail started easy, winding through tall trees that were just beginning to change colors. Maya set a comfortable pace, pointing out interesting plants and birds along the way. Ryan found himself relaxing despite feeling overdressed for the occasion. "So how did you get into hiking?" he asked, genuinely curious. "My dad used to take me when I was little," Maya said, stepping carefully over a fallen log. "After he passed away 5 years ago, I started coming back to these trails. It helps me feel connected to him." The simple honesty of her answer caught Ryan off guard. In his world, people rarely shared personal stories so openly, especially sad ones. Most conversations stayed surface level, focused on achievements and good times. "I'm sorry about your dad," Ryan said, meaning it. "Thank you. He would have loved meeting you. He always said the best way to know someone's character was to take them hiking. Can't hide behind fancy clothes and expensive restaurants out here." Ryan almost tripped over a root. Was Maya trying to tell him something? They continued, climbing, and Ryan quickly realized his expensive gear couldn't make up for his lack of fitness. Maya moved easily up the steeper sections while Ryan found himself breathing hard and sweating through his designer hiking shirt. "Want to take a break?" Maya suggested kindly, when she noticed him struggling. They sat on a fallen tree, sharing the water from Maya's simple bottle after Ryan realized his fancy one was too complicated to open quickly. The forest around them was quiet except for bird songs and rustling leaves. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said, looking out at the trees instead of at him. "Sure," Ryan replied, still catching his breath. "What are you hoping to get out of dating?" The question was so direct and unexpected that Ryan didn't have a prepared answer. His usual responses about finding someone special or building a connection felt hollow sitting there in the woods with Maya's genuine brown eyes waiting for honesty. "I guess I never really thought about it that deeply," he admitted. I date because that's what successful people do. Find someone attractive and charming, have fun together, see what happens." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "What about you, though? What do you actually want in a relationship?" Ryan realized he'd never considered that question seriously. His entire approach to dating had been about winning, about proving he was desirable and successful. The idea of figuring out what he personally wanted or needed had never entered the equation. "I honestly don't know," he said quietly. "That's okay," Maya replied. "Most people don't really think about it. They just follow the patterns they see in movies or from friends." They resumed hiking, eventually reaching a clearing with a stunning view of the valley below. Rolling hills stretched to the horizon, painted in brilliant reds and golds. Maya sat on a large rock and pulled out a simple lunch of sandwiches and fruit. "This is incredible," Ryan said, sitting beside her. He'd seen beautiful views from expensive restaurant windows and luxury hotel rooms, but somehow this felt different, more real. "My dad and I used to eat lunch at this exact spot," Maya said softly. "He'd always say that the best things in life can't be bought." As they ate, Maya asked Ryan more questions about his life, his family, his dreams beyond work success. Not the superficial questions he was used to answering at cocktail parties, but deeper ones that made him examine things he'd never considered. "Do you like your job?" she asked simply. "It pays well," Ryan answered automatically. "That wasn't what I asked." Ryan thought for a moment. "Some parts, yes. The creative problem solving is fun, but a lot of it feels empty, like I'm convincing people to buy things they don't really need just so my company can make more money." What would you do if money wasn't a factor? Nobody had ever asked Ryan that question. He found himself talking about ideas he'd buried years. Ego, teaching business skills to small entrepreneurs, maybe starting a nonprofit, using his marketing knowledge to help causes he actually cared about instead of just maximizing profits. Maya listened without judgment, asking follow-up questions. That helped him explore these half-formed dreams. By the time they started hiking back down, Ryan felt like he'd had the most honest conversation of his adult life. The descent was easier, and they talked about books, travel dreams, childhood memories, and favorite foods. Ryan realized he'd learned more about Maya in 6 hours than he'd learned about most women he'd dated for months. As they reached the parking lot, Ryan felt the familiar urge to escalate things physically. The day had gone so well, surely Maya would be open to more contact now. He moved closer as they reached her car, putting his hand on her arm. "Maya, I had an amazing time today," he said, leaning in slightly. Maya smiled warmly, but gently stepped back, creating space between them again. "So did I, Ryan. Thank you for sharing so much of yourself with me." She gave him another brief, friendly hug before getting in her car. Text me this week. I'd love to do something like this again. As Ryan drove home, still sweaty and tired from the hike, he felt frustrated and confused. The day had been perfect. Their connection felt genuine and deep. So why did Maya keep pulling away whenever he tried to move things forward physically? For the first time in his dating life, Ryan wondered if he was missing something important about what Maya actually wanted from him. 3 weeks into dating Maya, Ryan felt like he was losing his mind. Every rule he'd learned about relationships was being quietly shattered, and he couldn't figure out why she kept seeing him if she wasn't interested in getting closer. They'd been on 5 dates now. Coffee, hiking, a visit to an art museum Maya had suggested, a cooking class she'd found online, and a quiet dinner at a family-owned restaurant she loved. Each time, Ryan had tried to create romantic moments, and each time, Maya had gently stepped away. But here was the confusing part. She seemed to genuinely enjoy his company. She laughed at his jokes, asked thoughtful questions about his life, and always suggested their next activity with obvious enthusiasm. She just wouldn't let him kiss her. Ryan was lying in bed Sunday morning, staring at the ceiling and trying to decode Maya's behavior, when his phone rang. It was his sister Lisa calling from across the country. "Hey, stranger," Lisa said cheerfully. "How's the dating life? Mom said you've been seeing someone special." "I don't know if special is the right word," Ryan replied, sitting up. "More like completely confusing. Tell me everything." Ryan found himself describing Maya and their unusual dates. Lisa listened without interrupting, which was unusual for his typically chatty sister. "So let me get this straight," Lisa said when he finished. "You've met a woman who's intelligent, beautiful, has her own life and interests, enjoys spending time with you and makes you think about deeper things than usual. And your complaint is that she won't kiss you after 5 dates? When you put it like that, it sounds shallow," Ryan admitted. "Maybe because it is shallow?" Lisa's voice was gentle but pointed. "Ryan, when's the last time you actually wanted to get to know someone instead of just wanting them to want you?" The question hit him harder than expected. Ryan realized he couldn't remember ever being curious about a woman's thoughts and dreams the way he was with Maya. Usually he focused on whether they were impressed with him, not on understanding who they really were. "She's different," he said, quietly. "Different how?" "She asks me questions nobody else asks, about what I actually want, not what I've achieved. And when I'm with her, I feel like I'm more interesting than I thought I was." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "Sounds like she sees something in you that maybe you don't see in yourself." That Tuesday, Maya suggested they attend a poetry reading at a small bookstore downtown. Ryan's first instinct was to suggest dinner at an upscale restaurant instead, but he caught himself. Maya's suggestions always led to experiences he ended up enjoying, even when they sounded boring at first. The bookstore was cramped and warm, filled with mismatched chairs and the smell of old books. About 30 people sat listening to a young woman read verses about growing up in a small town. Ryan expected to be bored, but the poet's words painted pictures that made him think of his own childhood. During the break, Maya introduced him to several of her friends, other professors, a few artists, a social worker, and a nurse. Ryan waited for the usual questions about his job and income, but instead found himself in conversations about books, travel experiences, and volunteer work. "Maya says you're working on a charity campaign," said David, a bearded man who taught history. "What organization?" Ryan described the homeless shelter project he'd been developing. To his surprise, David knew the shelter director and offered to connect them for additional community support. "That's wonderful work," added Chen, a soft-spoken artist. "Marketing for good causes is so important but often overlooked." As the evening progressed, Ryan realized he was having genuine fun without trying to impress anyone. These people cared more about ideas and experiences than status symbols. For the first time in years, he felt like he could just be himself. Walking back to their cars after the reading, Maya was unusually quiet. "Penny for your thoughts?" Ryan asked. Maya stopped walking and turned to face him under a streetlight. "Can I tell you something honestly?" Ryan's stomach tightened. Of course. When we first met, my friend Jake warned me about you. He said you had a reputation for being charming but not serious about relationships. That you treated dating like a game you were trying to win. Ryan felt heat creep up his neck. And you believed him? I was curious about you, Maya said simply. I wanted to understand why someone would approach relationships that way. So I decided to see what would happen if I didn't play along with the usual games. The words hit Ryan like cold water. You've been studying me? At first, yes, Maya admitted. But something interesting happened. The more time we spent together, the more I started seeing glimpses of who you really are when you're not trying to impress anyone. Like tonight, when you talked about wanting to help that shelter. Or last weekend when you told me about your nephew's soccer games. Or when you helped that elderly couple at the museum without thinking anyone was watching. Ryan stood frozen, processing this revelation. Every moment he'd thought he was getting closer to Maya, she'd been conducting some kind of experiment. But here's what surprised me, Maya continued, stepping closer. I think there's a real person under all that performance, Ryan. Someone kind and thoughtful and genuinely interesting. The question is whether you're willing to let him out, or if you're too attached to playing the role of the smooth-talking charmer. She reached out and gently touched his arm. That's why I keep stepping back when you try to kiss me. I'm not rejecting you, Ryan. I'm waiting for the real you to show up. Maya's smile was soft but knowing. Tonight, when you were talking with my friends about ideas that actually matter to you, that was the real you, and I found him very attractive. Before Ryan could respond, Maya stood on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek softly. Think about it, she whispered. When you're ready to stop trying to win me and start trying to know me, I'll be here. She walked to her car, leaving Ryan standing alone under the streetlight. Everything he thought he knew about their relationship completely turned upside down. Ryan didn't sleep that night. He lay in his expensive apartment staring at the city lights through his floor-to-ceiling windows, replaying every moment of his relationship with Maya. Her words echoed in his mind. I'm waiting for the real you to show up. The real him. What did that even mean? For 3 days, Ryan avoided calling Maya. He felt exposed, like she'd peeled back layers he didn't even know he'd been hiding behind. Part of him was angry. What gave her the right to analyze him like some kind of psychology experiment? But a bigger part was terrified because everything she'd said was true. Thursday evening, his phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Hi. I know I dropped a lot on you the other night. No pressure to respond, but I wanted you to know I'm here when you're ready to talk. Even her text was gentle and understanding. Ryan stared at the message for an hour before finally typing back, Can we meet somewhere quiet? I think I owe you an explanation. They met at a small park near Maya's house the next evening. Maya sat on a bench feeding ducks at a small pond while Ryan paced nervously nearby. I've been thinking about what you said, Ryan began, finally sitting down beside her. About the real me, and I realized something pretty awful. Maya looked at him quietly, waiting. I don't think I know who the real me is anymore. I've been playing this character for so long that I'm not sure where the act ends, and I begin. Ryan's voice cracked slightly. After college, I got my heart broken pretty badly. My girlfriend left me for someone more successful, more confident, so I decided to become that guy. I learned how to dress better, talk smoother, make more money. I turned myself into someone no woman could resist. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that it was supposed to be temporary. The confident, charming guy became who I was all the time. Even when I was alone, I was still performing. Maya tossed another piece of bread to the ducks. What was the real Ryan like, before all the performance? Ryan thought back to his college years, before his ex-girlfriends. Rejection had changed everything. Quieter, I guess. I actually read books back then. I volunteered at an animal shelter. I wanted to teach business classes at community college to help people start their own companies. Those sound like beautiful dreams, Maya said softly. They felt too small after a while. Not impressive enough. So I buried them and focused on climbing the corporate ladder instead. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the ducks swim in lazy circles. "Maya, can I ask you something?" Ryan said finally. "Anything. Why did you give me a chance? If Jake warned you about me, why not just avoid me completely?" Maya smiled, the same knowing expression that had frustrated and intrigued Ryan from the beginning. "Because I could see glimpses of someone interesting underneath all that polish. When you forgot to be charming for a few seconds, you became much more attractive." "Like when?" "At Jake's party, when you started talking about that charity campaign. Your whole face changed. You stopped trying to impress me and started sharing something you actually cared about. That's when I decided you might be worth getting to know." Ryan felt something shift inside his chest. "I was so focused on trying to win you that I never stopped to think about what I actually wanted from you." "What do you want, Ryan?" The question was simple but loaded with months of confusion and self-discovery. Ryan looked at Maya sitting beside him in the golden evening light, her dark hair catching the breeze, her expression open and patient. "I want to know everything about you," he said quietly. "Not so I can use it to impress you, but because you're the most interesting person I've ever met. I want to understand how you see the world, what makes you laugh, what you dream about when you can't sleep." Maya's smile grew warmer. "And I want you to know the real me," Ryan continued, feeling braver. "Not the guy with the fancy watch and perfect pickup lines. The guy who still gets excited about helping that animal shelter, who actually prefers hiking to expensive restaurants, who wants to use his marketing skills to help people instead of just making rich companies richer. I want to stop trying to win you and start trying to deserve you." Maya turned to face him fully. "Ryan, you don't have to deserve me. That's still thinking like it's a competition. I just want you to be honest with me, and with yourself. I don't know if I remember how to do that. Then we'll figure it out together." Maya reached for his hand, the first time she'd initiated physical contact since they'd met. "But I need you to understand something. I'm not a prize to be won or a problem to be solved. I'm just a person who's interested in getting to know another person." Ryan squeezed her hand gently. "I think I'm starting to understand that." As the sun set behind the trees, Maya leaned closer to Ryan on the bench. This time, when he turned toward her, she didn't pull away. "Maya," he said softly, "I'd really like to kiss you now. Not because I think it means I'm winning something, but because I care about you, and this feels like the right moment." Her answer was to close the distance between them herself. The kiss was gentle, unhurried, and completely different from the conquests Ryan was used to. There was no sense of victory, no mental scorecard being updated. Just the simple pleasure of connecting with someone who saw him clearly and chose to be close to him anyway. When they broke apart, Maya rested her forehead against his. "See?" she whispered, smiling. "That wasn't so hard." Ryan laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. "I can't believe it took me this long to figure out." "Figure out what?" "That trying to be perfect for someone is nowhere near as good as being real with them." Maya kissed him again, and this time Ryan didn't think about technique or timing or what came next. He just enjoyed being exactly where he was, with exactly who he was, holding exactly the right person. For the first time in his adult life, Ryan stopped performing and started living.